Hi everyone, welcome back to Game MakerCast. In the previous lessons, we set up our game and we initialized the grid and drew the sprites onto the screen here. Now we can't do anything if we click, so let's actually do that in this video now. Let's close our game and we want to open up the game manager. So in here we have the create, the step, and the draw, and we are going to be currently working in the step event. So there's going to be a few things that we need to figure out. We need to figure out where we actually clicked in the game itself. And to do that, we're going to have to listen for a mouse button. So I'm going to write an if statement just saying if the mouse check, and I'm going to look for a button. Let's do button release. So if we release the button and we want the MB left, so mouse button left. So if we release our mouse button left, then we need to decide, or we need to figure out what row and what column we clicked in. And we can do this by using a little bit of math. I'm going to declare a new variable called mouse row, and it's going to equal the mouse Y position minus position Y. And you might be wondering, well, what is position Y? In the draw event, we have the position X and position Y, and this is where we basically just drew our grid. Now we're figuring this out through some math because our grid can either be 3 by 3, 4 by 4, or even 9 by 9, depending on what mode we change it into, and we will get that later on. But what we need to do to have access to these two variables is we need to take them out of the draw event and put them into the create event. You'll also notice that we have var in front, so this means that these variables, position X and position Y, are currently only available to whatever event they are in. So we're going to have to remove that as well. So we can just take this 4 lines of code here and we'll cut it, go over to the create event, and at the bottom, after we have the grid rows and grid columns, we'll have it down here. And so we don't want local scope, we want these variables accessible through any of the events. Let's take out the word var. Now let's save and go back to the step event, and we should notice that this has now turned purple instead of yellow, so we have access to this variable. Now what we want to do is, once we have the mouse position minus where we started drawing our grid, we want to divide by the global dot grid, and we want the spacing. And let's also copy and paste this. We'll do the same, but we'll say mouse column. And the column is left or right, so we need the mouse X position, then the position X, and once again, we'll divide it by the spacing, which I believe in our case is 40, not sure. But that will give us where our mouse row and column is. And to show this, we'll just say show debug message, and let's show the mouse row, and we'll copy and paste this and show the mouse column. So now if I hit F5, we'll have our game load up, and we'll see that when I click in the grid here, if we look at the bottom left, you'll see that now we are clicking 0, 0, 2, 2, and so on and so on. Now the only thing that's wrong right now is if we can use this code, but we need to put in some checks. Because if I click up here, we're going to get some invalid entries like -1 and -1. If I click way over here, we're going to get 7 and 10. And you and I know that 7 and 10 does not actually exist in our array. Our array is from 0, 0 all the way to 2 and 2. So we want to make sure that we're clicking within this grid instead of clicking outside. So that's an easy check that we can do. Right now, let's actually put it above our show debug message. We'll say if the mouse row is bigger than 0 and the mouse row is less than the global.grid rows, then we can come in here and we will say if the mouse column is bigger than 0 and the mouse underscore column is less than global.grid columns, then we want to run the code in here. And let's just show our debug message inside this if statement. So if I got everything right, when we load up our game, if we click outside, we don't see any messages. But if I click inside, we'll see the messages here at the bottom. So I can click on the corners. Oh, and I can't click here. And that is because we actually need mouse row to be bigger or equal to 0. Now let's run the game again. And if we click over here, we can keep going all the way down and it works. And we can check on the far side as well, and you can see it works just fine. So we have the clicking all done. Really the only thing left to do is going to be flipping the lights on and off. Now to do this, let's create a new script. Let's call it scr_flip light. And in here, this is the script that's going to be in charge of flipping the light on or off. Now, the reason we're doing it in a script is because if you remember in the game Lights Out, whatever light that we actually click, say we click the one in the middle one turns on or off, the one to the left, right, above, and below. So we actually need to call this a bunch of different times depending on where we are. If we click in the corner one will turn on or off, and then above and to the right, and then the other corners also works the same. So instead of writing this code multiple times, we'll just write it in a script, and we'll call the script to turn the lights on or off. So in here, we're going to accept a few different things. We need the row and the column that we are asking for. So the row will be argument 0. If I could spell that correctly, argument 0. And the column will be argument 1. Now all we have to do is check our global grid. So we'll say global.grid array. And if the row and the column that we are asking for equals 0, well, what do we want to do? Well, let's just copy this, because all we need to do is change it to 1. If it does not equal 0, so it's 1 or another value, we'll just change it to 0. And that's it for our flip light script. Now all we have to do is, when we click, depending on the mouse and row, we have to change the lights. So let's actually handle that inside this if statement here. We'll get rid of our show debug messages. So in here, let's do the above. So we'll say if the current mouse row is bigger than 0, meaning that we can have a light switch on above, we will call the script str flip light, and let's pass in the mouse row -1 and then the mouse column. So if we think about this, if we have, let's say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, if we click right here, the mouse row is above 0, so we can move up 1 and flip this light on or off. If we were to click here, the mouse row is not above 0 because there's no lights above here, so we can't turn that bit on or off. A little bit of ASCII art there. So let's do the left. The left is going to be if the mouse column is bigger than 0, then we will do the flip light. I'm just going to copy this, save a little bit of code here, or save a little bit of typing. So if we are going to the left, we want +1 for the column. So we have above, left, let's do the down. And let me actually copy the entire if statement here. So the down is going to be if the mouse row +1 is less than the global.grid rows, then we want to move down and flip the light. And to the right is going to be if the mouse column -1, because we're moving basically we're moving over 1, is going to be less than the global.grid columns. Then what we want to do is flip the light at the current mouse row and the current column -1. Finally, the light we clicked, and we will just copy our script, and we want to flip the light on or off on the mouse row and mouse column that we clicked. Okay, now if we have everything right, that's a lot of code. Let's hit F5 and see if we have any issues. So if we have everything right, if we click, we should see, let's actually try the corner here, and it looks like we have our first error. Now I did some debugging in the background, and I've actually found that the error should be on the right, because the mouse column -1, we're actually moving to the right, not to the left. So this needs to be plus, and that also needs to be plus. All right, so let's try this again. Let's hit F5 because we fixed that little bit of an issue. If we were moving to the left, obviously it would be minus. So this light should go on, or sorry, this light should go off, and these two will turn on. Perfect. Now let's try this corner. This one will be off, off, and then on. And once again, we have an error. The index is out of range. 2, 3 out of range of 3, 3. Okay, so this is another one where, let's see here, we have down. We obviously want to go down and up, and then to the left, we need the mouse column to -1. I think that should do it. Okay, Let's run it one more time. We know that this corner works. This corner, again, works. Let's try this one again. And that's working. And let's try the top. So this is on and then off, off. There we go. And now, all we really need to do is figure out a way on how to tell if we've won the game. Now in Lights Out, how you win the game is you basically turn all of the lights out themselves. So there's a pattern that we can use to figure out the lights. There's also websites. But what we need to do is figure out or write some code to actually do this for us. So in here, let's go to our create event because I don't want the check to run every second. I don't want it to happen every single frame. So let's create a new variable and let's say needs when check equals false. And then what I want to do is anytime that they click the mouse button and they are within the rows and columns, then we'll say needs when check equals true. So they can sit here for hours or whatever, and we won't be running this code. We'll only run it whenever they've clicked and changed one of the lights. So after all of this if statement here, we'll go all the way down to the bottom. We'll say if it needs a win check, then we can figure out if they've won the game or not. And really all we need to do is cycle through the entire grid and see if a light is turned on. If all the lights are turned off, then we know that they have won. So let's go to our draw event, and I'm all about copying code. So let's take our for statement here. Let's take both of them. And in the needs win check, let's paste it in. We'll fix up our spacing and get rid of the inside here because we don't need to have anything in there. What we need to do is we just need to have a new variable. We'll say var because we only need to accessible in this step has won game, and we'll set it to true. So as we're going through the array, we're going to be checking to see if a light is turned on. So we can say if the global.grid array, if the global.grid array at the row and column is equal to 1, we know that a light is on. So we say has won game equals false. And we don't need to continue checking the rest of the variables, the rest of the grid, because as soon as one light is turned on, then we know that the game has not been won. So we can just break out of there. So in here, we could say if has won game, and for now we'll just say show message, and we'll just say winner, and we will come back and fix that up. The other thing we should do is this break is only breaking out of the first for statement, so let's also say in the second for statement we'll say if has won game equals false. Then we also want to break out of this for statement. So we'll hit F5, we will load up our game, and let's see if we can manage to win a game quickly here. Just a bunch of clicking around. Let's see, there we go. Okay, so now when I click this, the above, below, left, right, and the middle should turn off, and with that, you can see that we have now won our game. Now we don't have anything to take us out of here, so it's just going to continue to say winner, winner, winner. Chicken dinner. So let's close our game, and maybe what we should do after this, just so we don't get stuck in a loop, we'll say room underscore, and we'll just say room underscore restart. Now we have a game that's working. We have everything good to go. The only thing we really need to do in the next episode will be creating all the menus and all the different difficulties that we have. But now you're free to play this game as much as you want and win as many times as you want. Thank you for watching this video. A shout out to Paul and also Matt and also the anonymous supporters we have through Patreon. Any little bit helps, and just want to say once again, thanks a lot. It really means the world to me.